Hi everyone, and welcome to this session, which is part of Getting on Board's Trustee Learning Programme. My name is Rosina, and I'll be hosting today's session. I'm going to be going over some housekeeping bits before I hand over to our trainer, Carol. So you will get access to the recording and any slides used following the session. I would like to kindly ask that you please stay muted on the call unless you're asked to unmute. This just helps to make sure everyone can hear who is talking clearly. Closed captions are available, and you will need to enable these from your end. Session content is specific to England and Wales, though many principles are applicable to Scotland and Northern Ireland. Everybody is welcome, and you are welcome to use the chat to ask questions and share experiences. We'd really love to hear from you. We'd like to kindly ask that you please keep your comments respectful and useful. And finally, thank you to our sponsors, Rathbones, for supporting the Trustee Learning Programme. It allows us to make this session and the whole programme free to attend. And I am going to hand over to Carol, who will be leading today's session.
Thank you. Is it all right to share my screen? Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
I'll share my screen. Is that all right?
You can share your screen, yes.
Okay, brilliant. So hi everyone, and yeah, lovely to be back. Thank you for asking me again. Today's training is a little bit different. So in the past, the last few, it's been about fundraising and specific things to do with that. Today is really about looking at how you start, navigating fundraising without a dedicated staff member. What are the things you can do, exactly how to start strong, stay strong until such a time as you may or may not have somebody to do all that hard work. But just before we start, in my usual manner, what I'd like to do is ask you all to take a quiz. So here's the link to the quiz, because I believe in strengthening our collective knowledge, but also knowing where our baseline is. So what we're starting with, so this should literally only take you less than a minute because it's multiple choice. So if you could all kind of head over there, that would be fantastic. So I'll give us a couple of minutes for most of us to just get there. So there are 29 of us on this call. So apart from me, I'm expecting 28 completions, if that's at all possible. And I will tell you what it looks like. So at the end, tell you what your scores are, what it looks like. Very happy to share that. I usually share it with Penny anyway, because I know that she, like me, really likes seeing where people are at. It also helps us curate the right kind of content for you. Yeah, so really helpful. So I'll just give it another minute or so. I know we started a little bit late, and that's fine. Like we just heard, we'll have all the notes, the presentations will come to you anyway. And what normally happens is I tend to do a little bit of a blog, because I understand that, as I'm talking through these, you'll just have basic things. But hopefully I'll be able to add a little bit more flesh to the blog afterwards and then post that for those of you who are on LinkedIn. It's just helpful. Okay, so if we could have one more minute, just click on it. Multiple choice questions, please, very quickly. If you could, that'll be really good. So we've got about 10 people haven't completed this. Can I ask you, ooh, there are more people on the call now. Can I ask you to please, if you're just joining, kindly complete this quiz. I'm not sure whether, yes, there it is. Yes, it's in the chat, and I'm going to put the link again. It will literally take you 30 seconds to 1 minute. Don't overthink it. Just literally go dive in there. Yeah, And the idea is really to gauge just how much you know about the UK charity sector income. And this is really important. The reason I'm pausing is because I'm going to start talking to it. And if you haven't completed it, what we don't want is for you to find out the answers before you have the opportunity to do so. So 30 more seconds, and I really do have to start. Yeah, 17 people haven't completed this. keeping an eye on it. Okay, please complete the quiz. I'm going to dive straight in and just kind of... Sorry, did somebody want to say something? No? Okay. All righty. So the interesting thing was I was asking questions about how much you know about the UK charity sector. And I think a lot of you are quite well informed. That's good. Well done. If you've come to any of my training in the last year, anyway, some of these questions shouldn't be new to you. If you haven't, that's okay. We'll be covering a little bit more today. So these were the questions, and I'm going to reveal the answers now. So for those of you who haven't taken it. So I asked you what the estimated total income of registered charities in the UK was in the last, completed financial year 22-23. And the answer, of course, is 88 billion. Interesting, right? That we're raising that much money, 88 billion. Just try and wrap your head around that. That's fantastic. The expenditure, interestingly, was also about 85 billion. So we're spending nearly as much as we're raising, which is good. It means, definitely those mission costs are very well needed. So if we ever needed, any justification for that, we can see that we really do need the money that we're asking for. Now, in terms of the percentage of registered charities reporting zero income, almost 10%. I mean, that blows your mind, especially when you think how many registered charities there are in the UK as of March 2023. So about a year ago, there were about 168,000 charities. The interesting thing about this data is that it doesn't include charities that are reporting less than £5,000 income annually. They're not obligated to report anything to the Charity Commission. And then there are also about 20,000 charities that, work in the religious space that don't have to report anything. So just think about that potentially there could be more than 250,000 charities, potentially. Now, if you think about that, also crucially is all to note is the fact that more than 80% of the sector is made up of people who are working for what we call micro charities and small charities. So really small, less than 500,000 or 100,000. Majority of, voluntary sector workforce is made up of this vast number of people. And that's really interesting because when you think about it, really, there are a few charities who are raising, more than 200 million, some more than $500 million, a handful, and literally one hand, full, raising that. But the rest are really contributing, if you like, not that much really. And that's why the subject of fundraising is really important. I'm sure you're here because I don't need to even make the case for that. It's really interesting just to note these things. Now, aside from actually assessing your current knowledge, the other thing I want to do is kind of take you back. If you were at the last training session that we had, we actually started talking about the landscape of the sector. We talked about how crucial fundraising is, especially and for trustees as well. I mean, it's actually impossible to carry on without a duty of care. The primary role of trustees obviously is to make sure that your charity is viable, and you cannot be viable without being able to fulfill your mission. I mean, that's what you're set up for, and that's always really, really difficult without any income. Now, never mind that, as we saw previously, quite a number of charities are actually doing that. It's not that they don't have income. They just have, gifts in kind. They have people who are donating their time. If you quantify that, that actually is worth something. And just as a sidebar, for a few years after I set up Money for You, we actually, until today, we actually quantify the value of our volunteers, the volunteering that we get, because it gives a true picture of just how much, if you were spending that money, how much you'd actually be expending towards all of the things that they do. So we understand that fundraising is important. We understand that, that it's critical for, your long-term sustainability, enabling you to fulfill your mission, achieve your goals, to make sure that you're bringing income. And we also understand, more importantly, that that's not always as straightforward or as easy as we would like it to be. So what are the things that you could do? Well, I kind of divided it into three main things, because at the end of the day, you want to keep it simple, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to ask questions. The first thing I would say is to make sure that you have a skills audit within your organization to build capacity. If you don't have anyone who is responsible for raising funds aside from trustees, so within the group of trustees or volunteers, try and do a skills audit. NCVO is quite good at providing the resources that you need to do this, and identify who has got what strengths and skills that you need. Because at the end of the day, utilizing those strengths can be a powerful starting point. And you want to do that really, because you're then going to go on to use those skills to develop your action plan. And then you also want to move forward using monitoring, evaluation, and learning. I say that because it's so important to keep taking the temperature with whatever you're doing. I don't believe in working harder and harder and harder. We have to work smarter. And so you want to know what works. And I'll tell you, I'll share a few of the tools that I use just to help us to get better. You want to make sure that, at the end of the day, if you have people who have strong writing skills, perhaps you want to focus on bid writing and proposal, applications, putting them through. What about you have people who are really sociable, like a good party, and people like them? Hey, maybe you want to focus on events. So there are different things that you could do depending on what skills, and strengths collectively that you have, as well as resources within the organization. Always a good thing. And then note those things, because you can then focus on either grant proposals, community events, online fundraising. If you find that somebody is a whiz or quite active on social media, those sort of things, then you want to actually focus on that. Now, I realized early on that we were attracting people who were either serial entrepreneurs or who were working in the fintech or financial sector, either by virtue of my own background or by virtue of the fact that that's something we do. We use financial literacy to, education to combat economic inequalities. And so for me, that really helped us early on start building corporate relationships in that sector. And maybe that's something you can do, because what you want to do when it comes to income generation is start with the 3 F's: friends, family, and fans. Okay, so who exactly would be willing to donate to you or open up their address book for you? One of the cardinal rules of fundraising is if you don't ask, you don't get. At the end of the day, if you haven't asked, yeah, you're where you are. If you ask, the worst that can happen is that you remain where you are. Nothing worse than that will happen. But the strong likelihood, and that is, when you think about statistics, there's a strong likelihood that the more you ask, the more you'll get. And so it pays to really ask and to keep asking. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a limited edition, activity. It's a continuous thing to keep on asking and asking and asking. The fact that you did a fundraiser for your birthday last year does not mean you'll never do one. The good news is you have a birthday every year, so you can do one every year if you want. As trustees also, the thing that I always say is assign clear tasks and responsibilities amongst trustees and leverage those identified skills that you've seen within your team. Everybody cannot do everything. A lot of meetings end with people going away, agreeing what they should do, but not who's going to do it, and more importantly, when it should be done by. Okay, always make sure you identify who'll do it and when they'll do it by. So that's really critical to success. Now, I promised to actually tell you about some tech tools that you might be able to use, and also some auditing, tools just to help you figure out where you are. The first is something everybody knows. It's a SWOT analysis. And literally, what you want to do is adopt a top-down method. Okay, so you literally want to figure out what the strengths and the weaknesses are in order to help you, mitigate, take advantage of the strengths will help you take advantage of the opportunities, and the weaknesses will help you mitigate against the threats. All right. So identify that within your organization. What are our strengths? Who do we know? Is this something that can really leverage what's going on right now in the economy? Do we have good access to media? Whatever it is, think about doing a SWOT analysis in order to help you understand the strengths that you have when it comes to fundraising. So that's one thing you could do. The other thing that you might want to think about doing is setting a SMART goal. Now, SMART just simply means it needs to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So think about all of the things that you've agreed as a group that you're going to do. And I said, make sure that you don't leave those meetings without ensuring that you know who's going to do all those things. Turn all of those actions into SMART goals, okay? And that really means that you're establishing measurable, objectives to track your progress and to assess the effectiveness of the fundraising efforts that you've agreed on as a group. Because remember, this is about starting and staying strong. Now, the other thing that I often use, which I find really, really helps me, is something that I call the Boston Matrix, as well as the Ansoff Matrix. Now, these are really management tools that you can use if you're already fundraising a little bit to figure out what you should or should not do. Now, the Boston Matrix helps you kind of think about divided into 4, you'll see that it'll have what you'll call your cash cows, the things that, generates a lot of income for you. They're steady, they're good ones. Then you have your rising stars, the things that, okay, if you add some money to them and keep investing in them, they'll turn into cash cows, they'll bring you money. So they do very well in the fundraising front, if you like. And that could be an event that, has limited capacity. I'll give you an example of one. Macmillan, the coffee morning, years and years ago. Remember, let's go back now to what I said about monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Everything you do, make sure you're analyzing so that you're learning, literally what happened. Was it worth doing? Have a wash up after every fundraising activity or, initiative. So they were observing that a number of volunteers were putting on these coffee mornings, and every year they would do them. It didn't seem like a great deal of effort, but they seemed to have a great time. It was easy to do, and they'd return money every year. And they thought to themselves, how about we put some money towards this and scale it up so that we can get other people doing this? Because this is really no effort. You don't even have to make the cakes. You just have to make it to Tesco or Waitrose or wherever to get the cakes, pop the kettle on, invite some friends, have a good old natter, and look, you can raise money in the process. I mean, who doesn't like that? And so they did that, but that's because they were learning. So that was a rising star, and they've turned it into a cash cow. Now, there are two others when you think about that matrix that you need to keep an eye on. One is what we call the dead dogs. I mean, they are just like, this is not making you any money. It's causing a lot of stress. Maybe it was started by the founder, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't bring in money. And remember, if it's a fundraising activity, it should raise funds. A fundraising activity should not just be raising your profile, okay? And a good return on investment for fundraising activities is 3-1 for all that effort. And you should think about doing a full cost recovery. So make sure you're really identifying every single amount of money that went into throwing, well, that activity, and making sure that you're getting at least 3 times back. So now, if it's a dead dog, there's no hope for it. It's just not going to go anywhere. It's been running. It's probably run its course. It's time to kill that. No sentiments. Put the time, the effort, and the money into something else. There's so many different kinds of fundraising that you could be involved with. And after I finish this, I'd like to, just recap on some of them because I've done this before. And then the final one is the problem activities. These are ones that just, you're not certain, they have potential, but they also give quite a bit of challenge to the team that's running it for all sorts of reasons. It might be capacity, it might be money, it might just be stress, whatever it is. Those ones that have that are problems, you need to give one last chance. Okay, figure out what the problem is with it. Is it a situation of we just need somebody to focus on this and see if it'll bring us something? Or is it that, it needs for us to maybe just attract and recruit some volunteers and place them focused on that? Or maybe even a consultant, a freelancer, we have a little bit of budget, let's put it towards a freelancer and focus on it and see if it'll get us anywhere. You want to test it, the idea, and if it really doesn't yield anything good, you want to kill it completely, okay? The Ansoff matrix, so that's the Boston matrix. The Ansoff matrix is really about growth, all right? And there's different ways that you can tackle the growth of any fundraising activity, that you have. It could be an existing activity and you want, with an existing market or in the same place, you want to grow that way, or you want to take it to a new market, or it's a new activity, again, with an existing audience, or of course, completely new activity, new audience. So that's it with these tools that you can use to fundraise, okay? On the subject of tools as well, fundraising tools, what I want to say, and I've touched on this before, but I think it's really important, just to recap, is making sure that you have a CRM system. And there's so many customer relationship management tool. There's so many that you can leverage. Salesforce, for instance, gives free licenses, nonprofit licenses away. So if you haven't got any at all, and you just want one to start with, you could potentially get a free one using Salesforce. I will say, just based on my experience of CRM systems and Salesforce, if you're going to use Salesforce and you don't have any budget to pay somebody to look at it, please don't tweak anything. Use it straight out of the box. The minute you start customizing Salesforce, you're never going to stop, and you're going to need people, and you're going to start spending money on it. Some people use Microsoft Dynamics. Again, that's paid for. And there are all sorts of other tools that you could use. I mean, Google's your best friend. You can go Google, but it's important to use a CRM system because you want to start tracking a number of things. You want to start tracking the amount of money you're bringing in. You want to start tracking also the donors that you're cultivating. Really important. And you want to make sure that you're storing data in a way that's compliant. Okay, I've covered this before, but I feel it's really important. If you're going to do fundraising well, you need a CRM system. If you're not techie at all and don't know where to start from, please use the humble spreadsheet, Excel, to start with. And then your goal is to try and find somebody that can help you to upgrade that and do more. Because if you are on the 365 ecosystem, Microsoft 365 ecosystem, there's so much you can do, presenting the data, automating different things, with Power BI. And one of our go-to places for recruiting volunteers is Rich Volunteering. If you've never used it, you really do want to try it. Lots and lots and lots of people come through Rich Volunteering. I do have to say, though, it's really difficult to manage volunteers because at the end of the day, they're with you to get some experience, usually, in order to go find a job. So you can never guarantee how long you'll have them for. Okay, there are also different kinds of communication and marketing tools for email marketing. And I think after a while, once you've cultivated some donors and you have people that you can email, you really want to start putting it, using a tool rather than just sending emails that, from your from Outlook. So you can use something like MailChimp. MailChimp is really, really good. There are others, but MailChimp is good. The entry level is great. It's quite intuitive, yeah. So you can really leverage those tools, leverage technology. Never be afraid of just going to Google and YouTube. So many things are free now, and you can learn how to do those things. Before I open up the floor to questions, I want to talk about post audits, some of the things that you might be able to do, once you are done with, your SWOT analysis and all the other things. It's really important after that to take all of that information to develop a fundraising strategy or plan, depending on what it is you want to do. You might want to think about it might just work for you to have a simple plan to start with, which will literally have 3 things. All good strategies must have 3 things. I'll simplify it. Where you are now, where you want to get to, and how you're going to get there. Okay? So where you are is current fundraising that's taking place. It could be 0. Hey, there's nowhere else to go but up. Where you want to get to, well, we want to raise 50K because we've never raised anything, or we're on 100K, we want to get to 500K. Okay, how are you going to get there? Well, we will have, a mix of different kinds of fundraising. We want to write grant applications, bearing in mind that for most of those, you literally have to give yourself maybe about 6 months in total, because you need to do your prospect research. That's like fishing. Who are we going to apply to? And the good news about that is there are over 8,000 grant makers, trusts and foundations in the UK. All right. It's not just the usual suspects. You can get access to some free grant databases, or you could pay for some. The DSC has a really good one. It's paid for, but the good news is you don't have to subscribe for the whole year. You can do like a 1 month or I think 1 week subscription, get all the prospects that are good for your organization, and then start writing to them. So you want maybe your how you want to get there is a mix of 3 different things. This year, we're going to focus on 3 things. We're going to focus on writing grant applications. So I've told you how to do that. We want to focus on events. Again, events, you have to decide what kind of events you really want. And then we want to maybe focus on maybe crowdfunding online, or we want to focus on individual giving, regular giving. So we want to ask our donors or our supporters, convert them to those who give to us every month. So maybe those are the 3 things. You don't have to do everything. You may also think to yourself, okay, we want to also do corporates. And that's because whatever you choose to do must be born out of the audits that you've done. That's shown you what your strengths are. Remember, it's not a destination, it's a journey. You're starting from somewhere because you want to build the income and the capacity you have in order to do more. So don't worry about that. Start with that strategy, okay? 3-step strategy. Then you want to start building relationships. And that's really what fundraising is about. Fundraising is really fun. It's friend raising. You know, you want to convince people, right, that you are the right person or your organization is the right one to partner with in order to achieve a mission of changing the world for X. Sorry? Okay. All righty, cool. Yeah, so you want to focus now, whatever you decide to do, you want to then focus on building relationships. And this is one that could potentially be split between the trustees or between whoever the members of staff are. And again, use your CRM system, identify the relationships you want to build, and then put a plan towards what you're going to do. We're going to email them once a month. We're going to invite them to tea and coffee. We're going to tell them what we're doing. We're going to get, you know, whatever it is you decide, but make sure that you're recording those touch points. I find that the more intentional you are about something, the more likely you are to be successful. Okay. And then cultivating donors as diverse as possible. Start with those who are most likely to support you. The number one reason for anyone to support a cause is a connection to the cause. So who are those, you know, connected to your cause? Like, how did they find you? You want to replicate the things that work and then multiply that. Cultivate those people and don't be afraid of asking them to introduce you to other people. Okay, every time you ask people to do that. And then, of course, use tech to help you work smarter. Because I understand it's difficult. There's so much to do. And we're often very lean teams. Remember what we said about, you know, right at the beginning, the state of the charity sector. Most organizations don't even have, don't operate with more than just volunteers. So not to mention not having a dedicated fundraiser. Right, I'm going to pause here to give you an opportunity to ask questions before I continue. Questions? Are there any questions in the chat? Or does anyone have any questions? Okay, a lot of quiet people. Not sure if you could hear me to start with, or if there was anything you didn't understand. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes, charity excellence is good, especially if you want to, yeah, looking for grants database. Very good. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. Okay. What I would like to know, guys,
Oh,
is
Carol, I'm sorry. There's a question in the chat someone has just posted.
what is the starting point for searching for funds for the charity? Okay, I'm guessing your organization doesn't have any funds at all, right? Never raised funds?
Sorry, actually, I'm a new trustee, so I'm not sure how it's been done. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, did you join us from the beginning?
No, I had issues with network.
Ah, okay. So that's why. So I talked about it at the beginning, really, where you start from. It's just the very first thing is to do like a skills audit, figure out what the strengths are, what, you know, you can build on right from the beginning. I think they're recording this, so you'll be able to kind of go back and see. Yeah, I think I talked about the starting point really is the first steps. Again, skills audit, because you want to build capacity. Yeah, you want to do a skills audit with your board because you want to figure out two things. What are the existing skills that we have? And what are the existing networks that we can leverage within the board and the wider team? It could be that someone has experience in grant writing, event planning, or connecting with different corporate bodies. So it's really quite powerful to use these strengths as, you know, as a starting point. And then once you've done that, you also want to think about developing your action plan. And that's when I started talking about the setting SMART goals. And then I kind of talked about the tools that you could use. And then I said, whatever you do, make sure you're monitoring, evaluating, and learning from it, because that's going to help you figure out. If you think about the Boston Matrix, that's really going to help you to make sure that you're not wasting resources. Because when your resources are lean, you want to deploy them to the best way, in the best way possible. Yeah. The first steps. So those are your first steps, really, literally. And then I also talked about potentially recruiting volunteers. You could try to recruit volunteers, but I also talked about the challenges with that. And you can use something like Reach Volunteering. Now, do we have any other questions about any particular kind of fundraising in particular, or about, starting? Yep, Reach Volunteering, thank you. And depending on how often the rhythm of your trustee meetings are, I would say if you've just started and you don't have a lot of fundraising going on, most trustee meetings tend to happen quarterly. But one of the things that my board and I do is a monthly stand-up outside of those trustee meetings. So the trustee meetings might be half a day or 3 hours or whatever, but the monthly stand-ups are 45 minutes. That enables us to pick up hot button issues that we need to keep our focus on. And fundraising is one of them. So you could do that where, again, you guys are sitting down and kind of thinking, what do we do with this? Okay. And exploring them. Yes. First time anyone has said you should look for a 3-to-1 return on cost recovery. Yes. Okay. So let me talk about return on investment for fundraising. Different types of fundraising have different returns on investment. The worst one is probably events. Events are so expensive. But that's because events do other things for you apart from just raising income. Usually you raise your profile, people, and there's usually like the opportunity to follow up. Okay. So yeah, events serve all kinds of purposes, aside from just raising money. You also find that when you put on really good events, you're going to have so many people come in for the first time. And that's always a great way to cultivate new supporters. So, but the return on investment can be quite low for events. Now, I also said, and this is really important, that when you're doing any kind of fundraising, like, okay, let's say it's events, and you're putting your budget together, make sure you're doing a full cost recovery. Make sure, okay, let's say you're having a gala dinner. Yep, obvious things to think about: the venue, the decorations, the catering, DJ, entertainment, whatever on the night. Most people don't actually budget or account for how much time the staff is spending, and their staff is spending on the event, and they don't budget that. They don't actually include like the contribution to overhead costs, that they're actually putting into it. So it's so important to do a full cost recovery. And you can find out more about full cost recovery on HMRC website, just to give you a really good idea as close as possible to know exactly how much you're spending. Because if you start that way, it will very quickly tell you whether or not that event or that activity is worth carrying out or not. Because the worst thing you want to do is go into deficit. Never start anything without calculating how much it'll cost. Too many people make a loss on events. Okay, alrighty, so that's for events fundraising. One of the highest is grants, applications, grants, trusts, and foundations. And that's because on average, you can write a grant and get like 10 times the amount, of whatever it is that you got, that you were hoping for. So if bid writing tends to be so much higher return on investment, so much more. I mean, you could have up to 10 to 1, you know, depending on what has been put into it, how much time. Remember, you want to quantify all that. Now, something like individual giving. And so what you want to do is you want people to give regularly, regular giving. Sometimes it can be quite expensive to acquire new supporters or donors. And so we tend to think for something like that, that the return on investment might be low. But there's another metric that I use for things like that, for regular giving. I use lifetime value, so LTV instead of ROI. The lifetime value for me is calculating based on insights, how long the average person is likely to stay donating to you. Now, research has shown that for most people, as long as you do the things that I talked about earlier on, you know, in making sure that you're stewarding them properly, that you're likely to keep them for on average of 7 years, believe it or not. Most people will keep on donating as long as, of course, they've got a job, their disposable income is fine, they don't enter a difficult phase of life, all that. They'll keep on donating if they like what you're doing, if they support it, and if they can have regular updates that reassures them that their money is actually going on fulfilling the mission. And that's why adjacent things like your social media, you know, stewardship, you know, making sure that you're regularly talking about what you're doing is really important. So for something like that, it might be expensive to acquire the donors, but the lifetime value, so say the person stays for 5 years or 7 years, how much are they likely to give you? If you calculate that, that gives you a better idea, you know, which is different from the return, immediate return on investment. The other thing that research shows is that religious donors are likely to stay for double that amount of time. So if you've got any connections to religious donors, you really want to attract them because they give as an outworking of their faith and their belief. And so they're unlikely to even cancel. I mean, they're just going to give up the coffees and all the other things that might be considered, you know, luxuries before they give up supporting something they truly believe in. Okay, so that's the difference, really. Major donors, again, high return on investment, but you can expect to spend between 18 months, well, 12 to 18 months, sometimes 24 months, cultivating that relationship. And most small teams will not start with that. Corporates can be quite good, except that sometimes you put a lot of effort into corporates and all you get is gifts in kind. So you just need to wait. That's why I said start by thinking about what you have that you and use what you have where you are to get to where you want to get to. I hope that's helpful. Yeah. So, and if you're a trustee, of course, anyone who's responsible for fundraising should really be returning good returns. Don't hire somebody and for a year they haven't raised at least 3 times their salary. Yeah, like, okay, that would be interesting if a fundraiser doesn't raise money for you, but yeah. And remember, you have to consider it as an investment. You need to invest money. It takes money to raise money. So as soon as you can, as a trustee board, start thinking about how you invest in fundraising. You may not be able to start straight away with, with hiring a full-time person. You don't need to, honestly. I have used consultants, who are on a retainer and who boost capacity, but it's really clear to set, what the outcomes are and to review those and monitor them. Make sure it's working. If it's not, you're just throwing money down the drain. It's also possible, to get people on fixed-term contracts, maybe somebody to just deliver an event for you. So they'll be responsible for getting the corporate partnerships, whatever. There's so many different ways of doing it, depending on how much capacity the trustees have. And again, of course, how much budget. So maybe the first thing you want to raise money for is to help you raise more money. So business development might be your first goal. And we've done that before in the past, just decided that we'll go out, look for business development funding, and yeah, use that. Oh, the other place, for those who've never done any bid writing before, or who've never raised any money from trusts and foundations, you need to just go to the National Lottery Award for All. They've recently raised it from £10,000 to £20,000. It's literally what it says, awards for all. It will fund anything. Okay, so if you've never started, that's a good place to start, because again, the bar is quite low in terms of what you need to write. It's not as complicated. All right, so that's a good one to start with. I do have to say though, because I sit on a number of grant assessment panels, what's heartwarming is to show proof of concept. For any grant application that you're putting through for any project, think about how you can demonstrate the need. It's one of the strongest things you can do. You should also demonstrate the fact that people are willing to support this cause. Because I often think to myself, you start a nonprofit, you've never raised a penny, not even from friends, and then you want people who don't know you to support you. I think that's a little bit iffy. Some people are in that fortunate position, but if you can just do a Facebook fundraiser, Facebook makes it easy, you know, Instagram, to ask your friends to donate. All you have to do is post on your birthday. So it doesn't have to be a lot of money, even £200, and then use that to trial whatever the ideas are, or to run that thing. And then you can then go and ask people for more money. Now, some other tips and tricks that I've used in the past for raising money from grants, from grant makers, trusts and foundations. Sometimes I will have multiple conversations. So go to one and say, okay, if you give us 100K, just for example, can we use that and ask and say that you'll match fund that? So that will then help us go to other people and say, look, we have someone who's willing to donate this amount if we can raise it. And that helps you to go to others. You see, success begets success. And sometimes people may be willing to match something while if they're not willing to give you the whole amount. Or it might be that they've actually said that they'll give you that amount. Ask them if you can use that to ask for match funds. The other thing also that you could use, and most people don't realize this, is when you're writing for trying to put together an application and asking for money, if the total amount that you need is about 15K, but the maximum that that funder is willing to give to you, either by virtue of the fact that that's how much they give, or that's how much you can get for your level of organization, then one of the things you could do is kind of think about all the gifts in kind that you have and boost the application, the budget, by putting that figure on. I'll give you an example. Last year, we asked a funder for some money to do something. And I don't want to mention the funder because, you know, that might be a breach. But one of the things that we did was the amount they were giving to us was less than the amount we needed. But one of the budget lines that we had was PR and marketing. And so what we did was we showed that we would apply some of our Google ad grants, £5,000 towards the projects. And then we were asking them for 10K. And for them, that was great. You see, because what a funder doesn't want to think is that if I don't give you the money, then you can't run this because it's what is £15,000, right? And I can only give 10. So they're just thinking maybe I should give it to somebody who I'm sure will be able to fulfill that project. Now, if you didn't know this, Google actually gives free ad grants to charities. And I wish we could do a session where I'm telling you about all the free stuff you can get from, you know, as a charity. But yeah, you should be able to get free Google ad grants and make sure you're deploying them, because honestly, everybody Googles and you want to be found via Google. Okay, use it to draw people to your website and to give to you. All right. So make sure that when people are finding you, they're finding out about how amazing you are. If you have an impact page, that's a good one. Use your Google Ad Grants. The place to go to, if you're just getting started and you don't know about all of these free things you can get, is something called Charity Digital. Go register on Charity Digital and you'll find out about all the free stuff you can get. You get Microsoft 365 Business for free. Yeah, and then you get discounted rates for all sorts of other things, you know, Canva, all sorts of different things, video editing tools, so many things there as a charity. Okay, alrighty. Yeah, is there any other question? Because I feel like I'm really talking to you guys. Is there anything anybody would like to know? Because we've still got a few more minutes before I hand over. Anything you'd like to know about any kind of fundraising, any kind of tools, whatever you can do to stay strong? The free tag for charities or they're not for profit, such as a community group. I think they're for registered charities. I believe they're for registered charities. Now I don't know if you're unregistered, why that is, because it doesn't serve you, especially if you're not for profit. If you're not for profit, I would strongly encourage you to get a legal structure. And there's so many different ones that you can access. You can be a CIO, you can be a KIC, you can be a CLG. There's so many, you know, that you can access, literally. Yeah, invest the time into that and automatically your pool for income that you generate will just expand. If you're, yeah, a registered organization. But you know what? If you don't need to, you can always access the tech as well. The tech tools, they'll help you if you have the budget for them. If for whatever reason you don't want to register, you can access those tech tools to help you get better. I cannot recommend the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, you know, enough, because we use so many things on it. And the form where you took your quiz on was on Typeform. My 3 favorite forms, Typeform, MS Forms, and Jotform, but they serve different purposes. If it's for something swanky like this, I'll use Typeform. It's quick and easy, has an AI tool that can create it for you. If it's something that needs to be saved, ooh, okay, I think I need to hand over. I see getting on board raising their hand. Okay, that's it. Over to you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh, Carol, sorry. I was just going to say that somebody has direct messaged me with a question.
Is that the thing about Google Ad Grants?
No, there's another question. Somebody has asked about GDPR, where they can find out more about GDPR.
ICO. So if you're a registered organization, you should have been contacted by the Information Commissioner's Office, ICO, and you should be paying a fee, an annual fee, if you're processing data, and they have more than adequate information on there. Many, many years ago, when GDPR was rolling in, I was part of the Chartered Institute of Fundraising. We did so many courses and talks about GDPR. I'm sure that if you go to YouTube and type it in, you'll see quite a few there that you can just watch. Yeah. Remember that there are 8 data protection principles. And now I'm not even sure how much time we have as we're just rounding up, but there are 8 reasons for processing, 8 principles for processing data. Just think about it. It must be fair and lawful. You must have a purpose for it. It must be adequate. It must be accurate. You think about how long you're retaining it for. Make sure you have the rights. Think about security. And that's why I spent quite some time talking about CRM. And of course, think about whether or not you're transferring it abroad. It's really easy. And then when you think about gathering data, I always say to people, I always question the amount of data we collect from people. If you don't need somebody's birthday for any reason, don't collect it. Only collect what you need for what you want to do, and only keep it for as long as you need it. That's sensible And if you think about that, it should guide you. But also, if you use a CRM system, make sure it's safe, because if you have a data breach, you have to report that. And I don't know if Getting on Board have something around data, because that's beyond the scope of this. But yeah, if you don't, I encourage you to put on training around that, because people do need to know about it. How do you get Google ads for charity? Yeah, just go on, type in Google ad grants for charity, literally. So for all of these things I've talked about, remember what I said, Google's your best friend, just literally type it. You're welcome. Okay. Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you to say. Oh, great. Somebody's put it in. Thanks, Randy. Perfect. I'm glad you did, Gary. Great. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, yep, by all means, I want to say thank you. Final word from me is, look, fundraising, we're not beggars if we're fundraisers, okay? We're expressing our deeply held beliefs in a way that invites others to join us in becoming world changers, because you want to give people an opportunity to work with you to achieve a shared vision and mission. Anyone who doesn't believe in your vision or your mission isn't on the journey with you. It shouldn't be difficult. With 8 billion people on the planet, you'll get people who are part of your tribe, part of your group, who want to journey with you. So yeah, go find them. And yeah, use Google to optimize your ads to find them. All right. And yeah, I really do look forward to being in touch with you guys. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carol, for hosting such a wonderful session. And thank you, everyone, again, for your patience at the start of the session as well. So just before we let you all go, I'd just like to provide some information on other ways that getting on board can help you. So you can check out our upcoming free trustee learning program sessions on our Eventbrite page. You can download our free guides and resources from our website. You can catch up on the Festival of Trusteeship 2023 sessions and book your early bird weekly pass to the 2024 Festival of Trusteeship, which will be happening on the 4th to the 8th of November. You can also visit our website to read more about the intensive and bespoke support that we can provide. And you can also sign up to our newsletter to keep up to date with topical issues facing trustees and how we can support you. And yeah, all of this information will be sent to you along with the slides after the session as well. And yeah, that is everything. Thank you again for attending, and thank you again, Carol, for a wonderful session. And you're welcome to go and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Sharing, I think. Am I still sharing? Nope.